You've got a great idea for a small business, but you just can't get it off the ground. You want to be your own boss, set your own hours. Well, new year means new opportunities, and Shopify's got you covered to help get your venture off the ground. Shopify makes it easy to manage your growing business. You can get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. And they help with the details like shipping, taxes, and payments from one single dashboard. Don't kick yourself next holiday season when your 2025 resolution list looks the same as it does today. Make it happen with Shopify. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/income.
This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic. You've probably heard the saying, a goal without a plan is just a wish. If you have big goals, and I hope you do, taking the time to create a plan or a map to get there is a great start. But what if the goal ends up getting in the way of you actually achieving it? Or you become so attached to the outcome in the future that everything in the present fills you with doubt? If you can relate to any of this, I'm right there with you. Goals in running and in life are necessary for improvement, but sometimes they can take away the joy of the journey. Thankfully, there are plenty of ways backed by research that we can achieve our dream goals without sacrificing our enjoyment of the present moment. Welcome to The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and my mission is to help you improve your running, your mindset, and your life with science-backed training and plant-based nutrition. Today's conversation is with the incomparable Lauren Fleshman, a former pro runner and author of the groundbreaking bestseller, Good for a Girl. This is Lauren's second time on the show, and our talk today is maybe even better than the first. She's celebrating the 10th anniversary edition of her Believe training journal, which is designed to be a simple and effective way of getting to know yourself as a runner, and it can be a roadmap to achieving your goals. We go over how a few minutes of pen to paper can profoundly shape your training, how goals can shift as you age, and how you can inspire kids and yourself to be runners for life. Lauren has a unique yet relatable perspective on how running affects us throughout our lives that I know you will enjoy. And of course, don't forget to stay tuned all the way to the end of the episode for another Mental Strength Minute. Fortify your mind in 60 seconds or less. And now, my conversation with Lauren Fleshman. Welcome to The Planted Runner, Lauren.
Hi, Claire. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's great to see you again. I don't know if you remember, but I interviewed you for Good for a Girl, which honestly, I have to say this, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a fangirl of yours, but it was one of the most powerful conversations I have had on this show. And what I want to know is, how has that book changed your life?
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I would just say that a lot of conversations like that needed to happen. And I could feel the relief and the kind of a combination of like a buzziness and a sense of relief anytime I got to talk about Good for a Girl with somebody. There was a big need for things that were difficult to put words to hear them have words put to them, to have experiences feel validated. A lot of people just said, like, I thought it was in my head. I thought these problems were in my head. And like, that's just, we know from research that going around thinking of real problems in your head is not good for you.
Right. Yes.
So I do feel like a really big sense of accomplishment to have like fulfilled the goal. And that was the entire goal.
Yeah, because it was more than just sharing your experience. It was meant to be kind of a warning and perhaps a guide for young girls who might be on a similar path as you were, correct?
Yeah, definitely. And to have a couple generations of women now who have been pioneers in early sport to be able to look back on their past and see it in a more complex way. You know, we carry a lot of older athletes carry a lot of wounds from their time in sports. So it was really nice to be able to impact those two seemingly completely different groups of people, the young and upcoming and the people who've already been through it, through this story. And I didn't really have an interest in just telling my sports story for the sake of it. It was like, I needed there to be a reason. It's a lot of work to sit there and navel gaze and write about the things you did.
Yes.
So.
Writing a book is harder than running a marathon for sure. So what have been some of the most profound reactions or feedbacks or stories you've received? I know we're here to talk about your other book, but I just got to follow up with this part.
Yeah.
First.
Well, they're very related. So, I would say one of the things that has struck me is just when I hear from young people, a lot of times through Instagram, people who are 15, 16, and they say, I read your book and this really speaks to what I'm going through right now. And then that's what I feared was the case before I wrote the book, that there were still young people. You know, once you're in your 40s, young people tend to be like, whatever you experienced, that was like ancient history.
Right.
And, but when a young person gets to read about your life as a young person, when they see themselves in it, I just was like affirmed that my suspicions were true, but also it was very devastating. Like, oh man, this really is as bad as I thought it was. This really is as prevalent as I thought it was still to this day. And I now have young children who are coming up facing like a future in these systems. So, so that was really powerful to see that this kind of tough thing is something we have in common across multiple generations. And then, I heard from some old teammates that were really powerful. I got long emails or even letters saying that like there were a couple athletes that joined the team and left within a year. And it was very mysterious. Nobody talked about why they left. And these were the kind of people that I was hearing from. Like, I remember the experience of being on the team and getting to read the way you viewed it it helped me realize it wasn't in my head. And that the things that went wrong for me weren't all my fault. You know, I think that's a big one, that burden that people carry, that the bad things that happen to them are just because of a story someone else told you. You're not dedicated enough. You know, you weren't tough enough. You just didn't have what it takes. You had the wrong body. Like, these are stories that these people have carried for a long time. So it makes me emotional anytime someone gets to re-examine that story for themselves. And then I think like coaches who are very passionate, I've had people reach out and be like, hey, there's discrimination happening right now on my track team or in our league. Or, you know, they'll tell me a specific thing that's happening where whenever we run out of time, whenever time is crunched, they just throw the distance girls into the boys race. And I don't think that's fair, because then the girls don't have a chance to cross the finish line first. And, you know, they'll say these things, should I say something? And I've been enjoying having people reach out to me, identifying problems, and like, they just need a little nudge. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that don't need the nudge, that are moving forward, but I'm grateful for the people who are reaching out and saying, I'm seeing this. Am I crazy? Should I say something? Should I take the risk to make a stink at the risk of being a difficult woman? And then generally doing it, you know, going out and making a little bit of a stink. So we have to make a lot of little stinks in order to get things changed.
We do. But I will tell you, as a cross-country mom and track mom, those meets go on for a really long time.
I get it.
They really do. I get it sometimes. But anyway.
Well, this I think was like maybe a conference championship or something. It wasn't like just a random Thursday dual meet.
Okay.
It was like the chance to win an actual top level sought after prize.
Yeah. So do you think the sport has changed since you were an athlete and then since you wrote the book?
I think that the book has helped. I think in a much smaller way, it reminds me of Me Too, where we still have bad actors. We still have a lot of problems for women in workplaces, but there are more people than ever who are looking at those dynamics and saying, that's not right. You know, we shouldn't have to put up with that. Right. Yeah. Versus like, oh, it's just the way it is. It sucks, but that's just the way it is. And sometimes making that shift is the hardest part. And you can't always rely on policy to fix things from the top down. And and I can't control that. I can't make people make policy, but I can help light a fire, like shine a mirror, hold up a mirror and light a fire for people to start saying that's not right. We shouldn't have to just put up with that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'd like to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about the transition from you being a pro athlete to now not being a pro athlete. And not so much because people can relate to you as a pro athlete. Most people are not pro athletes, but I think a lot of people can relate to aging in the sport.
Yes.
Not getting the times they used to have, all of that, not being able to compete the way they used to. I would love to hear your story and your perspective on that. Like, we're not going to get the times we used to get. How do we deal with it?
Yeah, it's interesting because I go to big races, like I go to the Philly Marathon the last couple of years, and I get to meet a lot of different aging athletes and see the way, like I do Q&A and I get to hear how they're coping and what questions they have. And it seems like there's two main groups of people. There's people who are struggling with what you describe, getting slower, it being difficult. You're kind of always comparing yourself to the ghost of your past and finding ways to cope with that. And then there's another group of people. And of course, this is an oversimplification, but these are the main two groups I come across. And this one is more like me. As we face aging and our past fastest self, we know we're not going to eclipse them again. You swing far the other way to like, oh, I don't really care about competition. I don't really try hard anymore, So it's like a type of avoidance rather than engaging with the difficult struggle of on a daily basis, having it in your face that it's harder than it used to be, that it's more painful than it used to be, that you need more recovery than you used to. And so I've gone that direction for a few years now. And so what the group that I'm in needs to figure out how to do is like, if we're content here, great. There's no problem.
Right.
This is like phases of life, different approaches to sport, no problem. But if there's a part of you that's like longing to push yourself in some way, but doesn't really know how to do that without it feeling negative, without it being in comparison, I don't have the answers because I'm still trying to figure that out for myself. Right.
Yeah.
And I guess like I'm finding it really difficult to stick to a training plan or maintain motivation for goals, specific goals of any kind, like really beyond participation. I find it not too hard to run a few days a week and maybe sign up for a race just to do it with my friends or by myself. That's easy to do. So I guess I just still don't really know, like, am I missing out on something by not pushing myself? Probably. There are a lot of really amazing benefits to having a stretchy goal and waking up with purpose every day, chasing after it, but also as like a person who is a parent of two and has a career. I wake up and do that in those other fields of my life every day. So I don't necessarily feel an overall ache, for that.
Yeah. I can relate to that so much. So you obviously, to be who you are, you have to have a competitive streak in you. You obviously have to have that inborn in you to be able to have done what you have done. So how do you scratch that itch, or has it gone, or is the other parts of your life fulfilling? And I'm asking because I'm very much in this space too. I used to be, I used to run fast marathons, not elite level, but pretty fast. And, now I could care less about ever running a marathon again. I have other goals. I have other things that kind of like fuel my fire, but it won't be running a marathon again, even though that was something that was such a part of my personality. So how do you shift that?
Well, it sounds like for us, it happened naturally to shift away from it. And I don't know that we need to shift back towards it unless we feel a call again. I think one thing that became apparent to me in writing my memoir was my competitiveness and drive. One could argue it was born into me. There were parts of it that were, but then there were also parts of it that were born out of dysfunction. Out of my childhood home of feeling like I needed to be great at things to feel the love and attention of my dad, who was an alcoholic. So I mixed those two things, my own drive with dysfunction. And once I let go of competition, in a way, I feel relieved. I feel like it's been healing to not depend on needing to be good to feel good about myself.
Yes.
Of course, it shows up in work or parenting and other places, that little shadow. But I think like when I examine getting back into it, I'm like, well, I don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us have that. I mean, even just like being in capitalism, right? Like there's like, we have our own socialized ways of relating to hard work. Some of us just inherently like to push ourselves every day. And some of us are driven by financial gain and wanting to have things, and all that's fine. But it's just to point out that we always have like this weaving of reasons why we are the way we are, why we do things, why we chase things. And I find it just as interesting to examine when we stop chasing something. Sometimes it's a sign of healing. Sometimes it's a sign of malaise and depression. But you got to figure out which one it is.
Yeah. I mean, it all comes back to how running is a metaphor for life, and vice versa. There's always something that running can teach you about your own life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Running definitely. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, like, what are if somebody asked you in an elevator, what has running taught you? How would you respond?
Oh gosh. I mean, I would need like to be in the tallest building in Dubai or something. But just like one thought from what we've been talking about that it taught me was that it really was an avenue for me to prove something. I needed a space to prove something to myself and other people. And I don't need that part of it anymore. I need running for the other things it gives, just like a familiar place that I can go, a familiar way that I can move that I've done for decades now. It feels better than any other form of exercise most of the time because it is so familiar. It's like a long-term relationship that has that coziness that you'll take me as I am. I don't need to worry. You're always here. So I love it for those reasons. That's what it gives me. But yeah, I guess it's taught me that, I am more than a brain, moving around in a shell. I'm a body. I'm an animal. I respond to my environment. I'm meant to move. All of those things I think are really grounding in life. And like every time I go do a run, that's affirmed for me. You can spend so much of life caught up in here, like relationship, conflict, or, work stuff, parenting stress, and just like bring it into the body again, bring it into the breath and the footfalls. It's just so good. And like it's taught me that we have, I mean, I know not everybody can run, obviously. And there will come a day when I can't, and that will be a sad day. But for those of us who can, it's a method of exploration too. Anytime I get to go into a new town or a trail or something like that, I'm so grateful that I get to do it, that I get to do it this way. It taught me how to relate to a team, how to be a part of something bigger than myself, how to be humble in defeat.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. How to not be threatened by someone else's greatness. Like how to kind of like stay with yourself when you're around other people who are really pushing.
Yeah.
Really like how to not get swept away.
Or who are better than you.
Discourage yourself. Yeah.
To be around people who are better than you is humbling.
Yep. And to realize that like they're faster than you, but they're not better than you as a person, right?
Yes.
Like
yes.
You have to
correction.
learn how to detach those things.
Yes.
From your identity. And so it's like, running challenged me in all those ways and learning hard lessons through those things. But for sure, I think it's like the safest place to learn those things. Like it was a really safe little microcosm of life to learn those things and be able to take them into the workplace and family life and relationships.
Absolutely. This just feels like a big exhale to hear you say all this stuff. It's just like running is a way to exhale everything else in life sometimes, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're here actually to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of your book, your training journal, Believe, that you wrote with Ro McGettigan Dumas. So she's not with us today, but I would love for you to kind of tell people who are not familiar with the book what it is and what it's for.
Well, the book originally, it preceded my memoir. So my memoir was a second attempt at basically the same thing, which is how can I inspire in a concrete way? How can I guide runners toward the better angels of what running or movement has to offer and minimize and move away from the shadowy parts, right? So just like all these things you said, running has taught me, it's very helpful to have some mentorship in that to help you kind of like approach things in a holistic way and nudge you and guide you towards ways of thinking. And so the Believe Training Journal is very mindfully set up for a year in your life. You can start at any time, unlike some agendas that are predated. You put the date in, you start at whatever week one is for you, that's week one. And you're going to go on a year-long journey with yourself. And it begins with goal setting. And we use like tried and true research-backed techniques. Ro is a certified counselor, sports psychologist person. So she's got that plus her Olympic credentials and coaching credentials and all that stuff. And so we guide people through the tools that we used when we were at our best and then move them in towards the different subjects and ways that running interacts with your life. So your mental game, how to approach the physical parts of training, recovery, nutrition, body image, dealing with adversity, and then like analyzing how to like take stock of yourself by the end of the year, how to effectively look back at where you started, the things you've done, and analyze it in a way that helps the positive changes stick so that you can bring them into the next year. And so that's what the journal is designed to do. It's a very active workbook style. And so you have 52 weeks worth of training log space, and you have every month a new topic that we discuss in an essay and interactive workbook exercises. And then the motivational quotes for the weeks that coincide with that theme relate to the theme. And those are the nudges of like, hey, what if you thought about it this way? Have you thought about it this way? Mm-hmm. And so you'll have a quote and a prompt each week that gets you to do that. And I think that if you're diligent about it, and it only takes a minute a day, once a month, it's maybe 6 minutes. But if you do that, it really does create changes inside you with the way you relate to yourself and sport, and helps you get the most out of what you're doing, not just from like a time or place perspective, but just from like a embodiment of self. Like is running serving me, right? Is it like serving me in all the ways it can? Well, this journal is meant to help that happen. And so I feel really proud that it can serve like someone who's trying to qualify for Boston or, qualify for the Olympics, all the way down to someone who wants to like start sport, try to remain consistent, which is in some ways harder. Like yes. Creating a new habit of health is so hard. And we need support in doing that. So yeah, with 10 years behind us, we had the support of our publisher to create like an updated edition. We have grown, Ro and I, in the last 10 years. We know different things. We have more perspective on some things. And we've had different jobs in the world since we originally wrote it. So we did do quite a bit of revising and updating. And it's at a place now where I feel like it can last many more years to come.
After a short break, I'll be back with more of my conversation with Lauren Fleshman. Americans spend an average of 90% of their time indoors, but did you know that indoor air can be up to 100 times more polluted than outdoor air? Breathe easy with Air Doctor, the award-winning air purifier that eliminates 99.9% of dangerous contaminants like allergens, viruses, smoke, gases, mold spores, and more. Air Doctor was voted Best Air Purifier by Newsweek, so it's no surprise that 98% of Air Doctor customers agree their home's air feels cleaner, safer, and healthier. Unlike other air purifiers, Air Doctor captures invisible particles 100 times smaller than standard HEPA filters. Head to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code PLANTEDRUNNER to get up to $300 off today. Air Doctor comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee plus a 3-year warranty, an $84 value free. Get this exclusive podcast-only offer now at airdoctorpro.com. airdoctorpro.com and use promo code PLANTEDRUNNER. I don't know about you, but those heavy, ugly plastic jugs of laundry detergent make no sense to me. You're paying for mostly water, they take up a ton of room in your laundry room, and then you toss the huge plastic jug in the recycling. And did you know that 500 million of those bottles end up in landfills and oceans every single year? That's why I made the switch to Earth Breeze laundry sheets. They come in plastic-free packaging, take up almost no space, and you're not wasting your money paying for watery detergent. It's an easy way to get clean clothes without all that plastic waste. Get 40% off with your subscription at earthbreeze.com/plantedrunner. That's earthbreeze.com/plantedrunner.
Sports stars. They're like superheroes.
But they're actually real.
Which is why we've made a podcast about them. You see,
They've all got a story.
but too many of these stories were cut short.
Kobe Bryant,
Payne Stewart,
Flojo,
Phil Hughes.
Justin Fashanu,
We're writing episodes about all of them.
and sadly many more.
Death of a Sports Star, a new series from Crowd Network.
And we're back with more of my conversation with Lauren Fleshman. What are some of the updates? What are some of the things you felt it was important to add in the second edition?
I think that in our earlier edition, our worldview is still so closely tied to high performance.
Right.
And while a lot of the things that work for high performance work for recreational athletes and beginners, just reading it now felt like, I don't know, it just felt like it underappreciated those other things running can bring you. It just put too much weight on the high performance side. And then I think just like ways we've in particular view nutrition and body image. I mean, the earlier editions, it's not like there was anything wrong with them, but they were more informed by what experts told us in our pursuit of high achieving sport. And we've since learned that, some of those things are maybe given more emphasis than they deserve. That, like we know more in science, we know more just from lived experience. And like, you can, it's like, this isn't an example, but like, if we had said, if you just did 10 minutes of core a day, and they're like, you don't actually need to do 10 minutes of core. We thought that 10 years ago. But even if we were pro athletes today, we now know you don't actually need to do 10 minutes of core every day. That's like mainly stuff like that. And I really want, I know that you don't want to give people more than they actually need to do, like to create and sustain habits. You actually want to be really efficient and mindful. And like, you need to be able to trust that someone's telling you what actually matters and you're not wasting your time. Time is precious.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in this day and age, there can be an app for this. So what is important about pen to paper for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's not, from what I've seen, an app for this specific thing. Like, going on a year-long journey with yourself. But there's research that's just come out recently. I mean, I think it was in the New Yorker. They had, or maybe it was New York Times. They had like 10 surprising wellness things we learned in 2024. And one of them was about pen to paper, how it operates differently. With like memory, you're more likely to remember something you've written down with your hand versus typed. And these research studies have existed before, but they continue to prove out, despite like our desperate urge to want technology to do everything better than we could do with our bodies. The research persists that there are some ways that it still makes sense for us to do that motion. Like that is like an ancient motion to write something down, to like have your eyes on this page. And then you get to hold it every day. You get to like, there's something in the ritual of picking it up off the shelf or off your bedside table, opening it. Like these are the kinds of rituals of like meditation, of having your daily coffee or your tea, like what you're telling your body that by doing this one thing every day is like, this matters. This matters. And I think that's really cool. And then you also get to like, it's not lost in the nightmare of your Google Drive. Maybe your Google Drive doesn't look like my Google Drive.
Oh, I bet it does. I bet it does.
Which I'm paying $100 a year to like store in my digital hoarding universe. Like this thing lives in its own place and it has its own space for as long as I want to keep it on my shelf. And I'm finding that the older I get, the more I value being able to find things from my past in a physically tangible way. The photo albums from my youth versus like, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, you can't find the digital photos. I get it. Yes, I know. So did you have a journal like this when you were coming up? And if so, did you bring it back out and look at it again?
Yeah, I had all kinds of like ugly, basic, like composition books or whatever, just really basic things. And they worked. They did the job okay. Like they put down my training in one place. And then at some point I needed to move to a spreadsheet to be able to communicate with my coach long distance where they would write in what I needed to do and I would write in what I actually did. And that was a way that we were able to keep in touch without keeping in touch. But then ironically, like, yes, it lives forever online, but it's like in some ways harder it doesn't have like a pulse. It doesn't have a heartbeat anymore. It's like if I look in my notebook and I can even just see from the handwriting I was using or weeks at a time when I got very minimal in the way I was writing versus like other times when I was more effusive and excited. Like that lives in my journal in a way it can't live on the internet.
Yeah, I'm smiling right now because you're reminding me. I actually just found an old box under my bed with my old journals from when I was in my 20s and boy crazy and me, just 20-year-old me writing about this boy and that boy. And I was just like, oh my God, I wish I could talk to that girl right now and tell her everything's going to be okay. And none of those boys are good enough for you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so interesting to see yourself 20 years later, 10 years later, whatever it is, and just be like, I know that girl,
Yes. And maybe this is something that I gain more of an appreciation with age. But as I change and grow and heal, and as I learn things through parenting, where I'm like face to face with the younger generation and remembering how my childhood was different while also like looking ahead at my aging mom. And I'm like in that sandwich, right? That they talk about the sandwich generation. And I love having parts of my life I can dip back into and see from where I am now. And I've never been like a super tech person. I do use technology. I know how to use it. I'm fluent in it, but I don't like get nostalgic and go on my Google Docs.
Right. I get it.
I just don't think it would scratch the itch in the same way.
Yeah. Well, I want to open up to a particular section where you have some goals written down, and it's young Lauren and 2024 Lauren. So page 29.
Okay.
And I'd love for you to talk. I mean, you don't have to read this whole thing, but I would love for you to kind of describe the differences between these two pages. Like, what do you see when you read your old goals versus the current ones?
Great. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So the way that it kind of lays out goal setting is in 3 sections. You've got, which everything's kind of teaching people, at least our tried and true way of setting goals. So you start with a goal, something simple, which old me, qualify for world champs and the 5K, which is basically the Olympics in a non-Olympic year. Then we prompt you to write the reasons for your goal, because studies show that if you don't have a strong why, that you're very unlikely to achieve your goal, to have the stick-to-itiveness in the hard times and adversity and the monotony, because it's like the preparation is not sexy most of the time, and goals take a long time to achieve. So by making me write down the reasons, I was like, okay, I love traveling and competing with the best in the world. And man, I did really love that at the time. I want to have a chance to fight for a medal. So in order to do that, I have to be at the race. I have to qualify for the race just to have that chance. Like it was like so intoxicating to me to have there be this, like, maybe I could do it. Maybe I could win a medal, and going for it. My other reason, I want to represent my country and the companies and people who have supported me for years. Obviously it takes a village. And so they believed in you and poured into you. And then just knowing there's more fast in these legs. So this was near the end of my professional racing career. And a lot of people thought that my fastest years were behind me, and I didn't feel that way. And so, that was the proving it to myself and proving it to other people. And then the third thing we do after the goal and the reasons, finding your why, are the actual steps. So this is, again, research backed. Like, if you don't break your goal into steps to achieve it, even if you're not identifying them all in this exercise, you're just taking a crack at it. That's the whole, I don't remember who said a goal without a plan is just a wish. It's like a famous quote that, I have found that to be true. So writing down some concrete steps, and then you have things you can work on. And there was smart training plan from coach with my input, racing schedule that sets me up to qualify, race under 15:25 for a 5K, finish top 3 at the US championships in June. I mean, those are just things you have to do to be able to go to Worlds, race cross country to get strong in the winter, and do circuits and gym in the fall, and consistent mileage, 60 to 75 miles a week plus body work. So I knew, like, if I do these things, right, compare that to 2024 me.
Yes.
Goal: build a new athletic identity for myself that is consistent and resilient in middle age. Reasons: racing isn't motivating right now, so I need other reasons to move. Mental health, immune function, bone density, muscle mass retention. Fitness makes me able to say yes to spontaneous adventures. That one's really important to me, as it turns out. Memorable moments outdoors. And then my steps to do that are that I need to do yoga or strength work 2 times a week. Give myself credit for small workouts. So this is kind of like along the lines of chasing or going up against the ghost of your past. It's easy for me to say, oh, well, I did 4 laps on the track of sprinting the straightaways. That's nothing compared to what I used to do. That doesn't really count. So it's really important that I do that regularly. Giving myself credit, and then redefining success as showing up, a variety of sports and activities to maximize pleasure, adventure, and community. And then the last step is, when I'm uninspired, get outside for a 5-minute walk. Just do something daily. So it's really just like keeping some little bit of momentum going.
Yeah. And how successful have you been at all of these?
I've been pretty successful. I'd say outside of the yoga and strength work 2 times a week, I'm doing a really good job.
Why aren't you doing yoga and strength? What's going on?
I know. Last month I just subscribed to Athletes for Yoga, just like a very inexpensive, digestible online thing and app where you can just be like, I'm going to do a 3-minute meditation. I'm going to do a 5-minute yoga hip opening. And, you just like pick it and do it. And that's designed to help me with that last little bit.
Nice. I love it.
And I definitely am noticing, like, without that piece, I have felt the negative impact of not committing to that piece last year, of just like, I get more sore, I get more tight. It's like movement is less pleasurable if you're not staying loose between exercises. You start to just kind of crustify.
Right. Well, I'd love to have a little bit more in-depth discussion about goal setting, because on the one hand, you should have some goals. Everybody talks about how you got to have goals to do anything in life. But yet goal setting is also a little problematic at times. It can get very toxic. It can get to the point where you're so focused on the goal that your present reality is affected negatively. Can you talk a little bit about that part of goal setting? Like, how can we set a goal that's healthy and maybe a stretch, but then forget about it and do the work? Yeah.
Well, I think that's the idea behind writing down the steps. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be evaluating where you are in relation to your goal on a daily basis, because we have to have all these kinds of fluctuations. I mean, you want to live in your present life and do life, right?
Right.
So when you break it down to the steps, then you just, these are actually very small things that I can do. Mm-hmm. And including just go for a 5-minute walk. If all else fails, just move in some way. Right.
Yeah.
But I could see, like, from my past goals, there was a lot more space for it to be negative, right? Because it's like, you're trying to achieve something very intense, and it can inspire a very selfish lifestyle. And when I was doing that, I was not able to really be that great of a friend or a caregiver or any of those things. I wasn't also trying to balance motherhood. And I'm sure people do it better than I could have, but I was very singularly focused. And I don't know if that's what you're talking about with the downsides of goals.
It is. Yeah. Because the beautiful thing about running is that it's binary. You either get to point A to point B in a certain time or you don't. You either win the race or you lose the race. You either make the team or you don't make the team. That's the beautiful thing about it, because it's clear cut, but that's also the negative thing about it. That's the thing that we obsess about. That's the thing, I didn't run X time. I didn't get my BQ. I didn't, how on earth am I going to run marathon pace? That kind of thing just starts a spiral sometimes. And that's what I want to kind of unravel a little bit.
Well, I think that this is also accounted for in the why. So if your whys should be things that whether or not you accomplish the goal, in the pursuing of that goal, you set yourself up for a lifestyle where those things were happening. So the way I describe it in the opening chapter is that the goal setting process is like setting the GPS in your maps for a long road trip to a faraway place. And if you do the goal setting exercise well, you're setting yourself up, your general route.
Right.
But life is the route. That's why you set the goal, is to be on a particular route. And so you can experience life, experiencing life as a person trying to make it to the world championships was very stimulating for me. And if I hadn't had that goal, I wouldn't have been on that road. And, similar, I'm on a totally different road now. And whether or not I accomplish my goal, if I get to the end of the year and I still don't feel like my athletic identity still feels nebulous, and I don't necessarily feel really that consistent or resilient. If I've done at least a B+ job, which this book really helps you do, I will have experienced a lot of the reasons for my goal, and I will have experienced good things. I would have gone on runs with friends that I wouldn't have gone on otherwise. I would have gone to trails and explored things I wouldn't have done otherwise. Right. So I think that that's important, that athletes who are setting goals, you need to be aware when you're setting it, that that's not actually the reason you're doing it.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So I have a 14-year-old daughter. She's in 8th grade, cross country in the fall, track in the spring. And I'm going to hand her this book after we're done with this.
Okay.
What should I tell her as a mom and as I'm a running coach, so there's a fine line there. What kind of advice would you give her?
An 8th grader who, well, how much does she like to run?
She loves it. She loves it. I have to pull her back. So she's,
what does she love about it?
She only joined the track team and cross country team because her friends were on it. She didn't want to run. I never pushed her. I never told her she should. She did it for the friendships. And then she started realizing that she's good at it. Not winning races, but 3rd, 4th, that kind of level. And she wants to win. So that's what she loves about it.
I think if that drive to win is coming from her, I would recommend focusing a lot of your energy on those initial reasons why she likes it, because those ones can sustain over a lifetime.
The friends.
Yeah, you don't need to stoke the winning fire at all, right?
I don't. Well, I mean, I cheer a little loud, but yeah.
Yeah, sure, cheer it. But I mean, you don't have to in the morning be are you doing the thing you need to do to win this race? Right? She is coming up with that on her own. I think that being at least giving the appearance that you're not invested in that part of the goal, that's not important to you, supporting her and chasing it, but putting most of your, making sure well, this isn't even the question you asked me.
It's okay.
I'm giving parenting advice.
Please do. I'll take it.
But yeah, I think just having her perception of her parent or coach be, oh, my parent or coach was really invested in the team camaraderie part, making sure that the social opportunities were there and amplified, and asks questions about those part of it at least as often as the performance part of it.
That is excellent. I never would have thought about that part, but yes, that's great.
Yeah. And then if you get to be able to be part of the goal setting or any kind of like consulting in it, like you could nudge like, well, what about the community side? What about the friendship side? Like, where are you going to put that? You know, like if you get a chance to add notes when you're looking at it, like I think that those are things that she can practice from a young age that, okay, no matter whether I get the A goal or not, which is winning this thing, let's say, these other parts are a part of the experience. And I'm training myself to state them as important and notice them regularly.
Yeah. Because the last thing a young kid needs is to feel like they're disappointing their parents, if they don't do well. So obviously we want to encourage them to do their best, and it's great when they win, but we got to kind of pull back that part, like not use our children for our own competitiveness, right?
Yeah.
I see that.
Oh, it's everywhere. Even with just an 11-year-old in sport, and the temptation is strong to work out your competitive stuff through children, right? It's like, it's easy to do. And
do you feel extra pressure because of who you are and to your ex-husband? What is to raise like Olympians? Like, do you feel that? No?
I feel the opposite, honestly. I feel like worried they'll be good and that they'll be on that path.
Why?
Because like, obviously I gained a lot of experiences and stuff, but I think like I got pretty far away from the things that actually mattered the most in life. And there are ways that I could have pursued those goals that were more holistic at the time. But I've had to do a lot of work to like decentralize my needs all the time. To like be a more caring and attentive partner and parent, and like all of those things were very anti the way I approached sport and was told to like, what was important to other people was how fast I ran. That was what was important. That's what was financially rewarded, and attention and praise and value. Right. So like, those traps are ever present in the high performance part of sport. So I feel like, I really don't care if they're very good at it.
Yeah.
In some ways it'd be easier to just like be in sport because you like it and in a way that is sustainable over a lifetime. And I don't know. I guess that's it. And then also there's the stuff I wrote about in my book. There's still a lot of traps in sport, especially for girls, like just hearing 14-year-old girl getting third. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. And as you know, like our female performance wave, there could be rocky times. And so it's like especially important to focus on the holistic, enduring parts when they're having early success, because those are the parts that will carry them through any roller coaster bits of the sport.
Yeah. Do you think it's important for kids, especially girls, but boys too, that they are more well-rounded, or is it fine to do cross country and then indoor track and then outdoor track and then run all summer? I mean, some of the research is showing that kids that do multi-sports actually turn out a little bit better. Have you seen that, or any thoughts on that?
There's a lot of research about that for sure. I will definitely encourage my kids to do multiple sports for as long as they'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like the only reason not to is that sometimes you're maybe more likely to get a scholarship if you're hyper specialized. There's like this weird little window where a big prize is given out to very few people who are at their best at age 17, which is obviously like, it's real. There's a lot of money, but there's also a cost paid for that. And I'm not willing to do that. I mean, I value community college and state schools as much as I value any other thing.
Right.
So yeah, I mostly just want them to be able to be healthy and move their bodies for a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think the other reason why Jesse and I aren't particularly competitive parents is just like, we know from experience how much of it is up here and like in here, and that nobody else can really influence that piece.
Yeah.
It's like kind of innate.
You got to want it bad.
Yeah. And like it doesn't do me any good to want it for them. It's like a waste of energy because it's has to come from them in the end anyway. And I just want to be mindful about where I put my energy, with, especially always, but definitely with my kids, because it's like, it's hard enough.
Yes, it is. It is. So what do you hope people take away from this book, this conversation? Like if somebody came to you a year from now with the journal filled out, like what would be the greatest thing that they could say to you?
I would say like, I know myself so much better as a person and as a runner now.
Yeah.
You know, like I really feel like I grew as a runner and a person. And I don't see how you could not if you do this. It's not like rocket science, but it's this little thing. It's this little prompt every day that you can do. And AI can't do it for you. And
Right.
And it just makes, I think they would feel like they weren't on autopilot in this part of their life as much as maybe they have been in the past.
That's an interesting comment, because I get that a lot, that people actually want to be on autopilot. That's why they hire coaches. That's why they want a race plan. That's why they want me to tell them every split that they should hit for their marathon, which I don't do, by the way. I never do that. But they want to be on autopilot because they're scared of making decisions by themselves, or there's some kind of insecurity piece there. How would you encourage people to, I mean, you know this in racing, your coach can only tell you so much, but you have to be the one making the decisions when you're in the race, right?
Yes.
So how do you get to trust that inner voice and not be on autopilot?
One way that I helped athletes learn that was like, I would give them ranges. So I'll be specific about your workout, but I'll give you a range. And that day is going to be start simple, between 10 and 11 miles. Run between 10 and 11 miles by the time it's all done, right? And they have to make that decision for themselves. When is enough? Should I go do the extra mile? And if you truly, as a coach, don't put any value more on 10 versus 11 miles, that helps, right? Because then they're just making the decision based on how my body feels. Or if it's 6 to 8 times 800 meters, and they genuinely believe you, and you say, I don't care. The point is to do the amount that feels like enough, when it feels like enough, and only you can really know that. And these are low stakes ways to flex that muscle and trust yourself. Yeah. But also highly specific. I'm telling them what pace to go, or a pace range. I'm really big on a pace range. And I like to teach them to try to have their last one be their best one if possible. And they have to be the one that like meters their effort to do that. Right. But these are just like small ways to learn your body. And I think that like the autopilot, what I mean by getting them off autopilot, I still think it's great to have a training plan. I'm lost without a training plan. Right.
Yeah.
But it's just like, you went out and you did all that work. You did it. Take a minute to notice it, to give yourself credit for it. It's just like a gratitude practice. And that if you don't practice gratitude, great things in your life are just going by the window, and you haven't trained yourself to see it. And satisfaction is a skill like gratitude that you have to practice. You have to flex that muscle. I'm satisfied. I did the thing I said I was going to do today. Boom. I wrote it down. I put a check mark on the day. That's important.
That's great. We don't talk about that enough. How to be satisfied. You know, we're always running the extra mile. We're always doing the laps in our driveway just so that our Garmin says, you know, a round number. Yeah. You know, if your coach tells you to run, I don't know, 6 minutes pace, you're going to run 5:55 just to like beat it. You know, it's learning to be satisfied is something that we all need to practice, I think. I like
Definitely. That. And Kara Goucher has a great journal on this called the Strong Journal. And it's based on these simple ideas of her journal is like, you write down just one thing you did today that moved you closer to your goal. And some days are bad days and you really have to reach. And the answer is just, I showed up. That's it. But like you're teaching yourself to view that as a positive. Like on my worst day, I showed up.
I love
and
it.
When you get to race day, you've got evidence, just like this journal, you have evidence of all of those days you put together, the road trip you've been on, the things that went by the window, a life lived outside of that goal. And now the goal doesn't define you.
I love it. Okay. I think that's a really perfect place to kind of wrap things up before I let you go, Lauren. Tell everybody where they can connect with you.
Fleshman Flyer on Instagram, laurenfleshman.com is where, my book lives, and ways to interact with me, hire me for speaking or consulting. And that's it, I guess. That's where I am. And Good for a Girl and the Believe Training Journal.
Yeah. All right. Well, absolutely delightful to speak with you again. You have been one of my favorite guests, and I'm so lucky and grateful that you took the time to speak with us today. Just another great conversation.
Easy to say yes to your podcast. You do a really good job. And so I'm grateful you reached out and glad we had a chance to connect.
And now it's time for the Mental Strength Minute. Fortify your mind in 60 seconds or less. Today's topic is the brain believes whatever you tell it. If you tell yourself, this is hard, or I'm so slow, in the middle of a workout, your brain will believe you. If you say you are strong or you can do it, your brain will believe that instead. This is exactly why the placebo effect and the nocebo effect are real. If you think a drug will work, it probably will, and vice versa. So practice saying positive things to yourself when running gets hard, even if you don't believe it at first. Soon enough, you'll get out of your own head and be capable of more than you think. Thank you for listening to The Planted Runner, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Don't forget that you can win free access to one of my sprint session masterclasses just for writing an Apple Podcast review. So be sure to write yours right after your run today. Reviews are the #1 way to boost this show's reach, and it's a great way to tell me what you'd like to hear next because I read every single one. Have a great run today.
Women's Running Stories, where we explore the intersection between running and life. Because every woman who is committed to a running journey has a story to tell, and this is where you'll find those stories. I am host and producer Cherie Louise Turner. I'm a 53-year-old runner, and together with original music by musician and runner Cormac O'Regan, we bring these inspirational stories to life. Please join us to fuel your adventures.